Yes, our Lord has risen and blessed us with album of the year. Of course, I'm talking about Virgin. And oh my god, do we have so much to talk about. This video will be a discussion about Lorde's new album Virgin, particularly about her gender expression and her breaking free from the limitations she thought she was trapped in. Content warning though, we will talk about gender dysphoria and body dysmorphia. The world Lorde left us in 2021 was very different. In the middle of the COVID lockdowns, it was hard to see a way out, and for so many of us, it was hard to even see the sun. And Lorde gave us solar power in the hopes that it would provide what we were all desperately missing: connection, warmth, and aspirations. Despite it being critically panned and disliked by audiences, I think it's some of her best lyrical work, especially Son of the Nail Salon, Oceanic Feeling, and The Path. But when the Girl So Confusing remix came out in 2024, it was a reintroduction of Lorde to the world, one that now looked and felt so very different from when she released Solar Power. In many ways, the Girl So Confusing remix was also a reintroduction to Lorde's artistry. It's there that we learn of Lorde's struggles in the years during and after Solar Power. Now we know that Lorde isn't as well as we may have thought she was during Solar Power, and that whatever music we were going to get from her was gonna hurt. And that's when we started learning more about the new album that Lorde was working on. On the 1st of May, Lorde's 4th studio album was christened Virgin, and we saw the new album cover for the first time. It was a striking blue x-ray of Lorde's pelvis. It was really cold and clinical, but there was so much in it that would really tell us about the direction that Lorde was going in. Looking closer at the cover, you can see it's an x-ray of her jeans and her belt still on. And if you zoom in even closer, you can see her IUD. In an email she sent us, the fans, she said the color of the album is clear, like bathwater, windows, ice, spit, full transparency. I was trying to see myself all the way through. I was trying to make a document that reflected my femininity. Raw, primal, innocent, elegant, open-hearted, spiritual mask. She finishes it with, I'm proud and scared of this album. There's nowhere to hide. I believe that putting the deepest parts of ourselves to music is what sets us free. Coming June 27. So from that description and the album cover itself, it made me think that Virgin was symbolizing the way in which women's bodies are looked at and treated as though you can see straight through them, even if they're wearing clothes. That women's bodies are something we can poke and prod at, something we can control in a clinical way without any empathy or understanding. That a virgin is someone who is deemed innocent but has to bear all of themselves to prove it. I also think the IUD, although it's literally something that is inside of her, is a nod to weaponization of bodily autonomy, and how throughout history, but obviously especially again right now, governments are restricting the rights of women. It's also the first glimpse that we get at Lorde expressing how she perceives her own gender expression. After What Was That, we got 2 more singles, Man of the Year and Hammer, both with gripping music videos. Man of the Year clearly referencing Lorde's gender exploration and identity. Hammer reminded me a lot of the Perfect Places music video with splashes of solar power and mood ring in there too. Then on June 27th, the world was blessed with Virgin. Even as someone who would defend solar power to the day I die, Virgin feels like so much of a rebirth for Lorde. It's raw, it's energetic, and it has such striking songwriting. More than most artists nowadays, Lorde has such a distinct and unique way of writing songs that even if you were just reading them, you could still tell they were hers. But it's in songs like Hammer and Man of the Year that really intrigue me the most, especially when they reference her gender. Lorde's exploration of her gender expression and experience is a central theme on Virgin. As you remember, she told us that Virgin was a way to make a document that reflected my femininity. She told Document Journal in a conversation with photographer Martine Sims that What Was That and Virgin as a whole came from becoming single, but also really facing my body stuff head on and starting to feel my gender broadening a little bit. She also said that this album is a byproduct of the processes of fully coming into my body and feeling the fullness of my power. Even the fact that Lorde worked with someone like Martine, who was known for her own exploration of gender identity, shows a deeper understanding and unpacking of how Lorde perceives her own gender expression. And we can see her wanting to step into a more truer form. We see that really clearly on Hammer when Lorde says that some days I'm a woman, some days I'm a man, which is a quote that everyone has obviously taken and run with in wanting to define who Lorde is now. Instead, she told Brittany Spanos in a Rolling Stone interview that when Chappell Roan asked her about her pronouns and her gender, Lorde said, I'm a woman except for the days when I'm a man. I know that's not a very satisfying answer, but there's a part of me that is really resistant to boxing it up. The article also says that Lorde still calls herself a cis woman and her pronouns are still the same, although she says she's in the middle gender-wise. I actually think it's incredibly powerful to resist being boxed in a healthy healthy, non-confrontational way. I myself have struggled with my gender identity and feel equally pressured to define myself as non-binary, but I don't always feel that. Although it's liberating for some to reject heteronormative labels and find a word that clearly fits how you feel, I don't necessarily connect with it that much. And for me, as an Indigenous person, it's more to do with a continual decolonizing of gender and what's imposed onto me by systems and structures on how I should be as a man. So the term non-binary doesn't really fit that well into my understanding of who I am. And for Lorde, it seems like she's just trying to expand her definition of what a woman is, beyond the limitations imposed upon her. Just because she feels more masculine and wants to shed some of the shame or guilt around that doesn't mean that she's any less of a woman in her mind. Masculinity, or the absence of it, doesn't define a gender. As she says, it's a gender broadening, not a changing per se. Even the title hammer is an example of this process. A hammer is used as both a tool of destruction and creation, and Lorde's deconstructing what she thought it was to be a woman, what society placed on her gender, and is now building her own version. Man of the Year is obviously one of the strongest examples of her gender journey. Although TikTok has taken the sound and used it to expose shitty men, ironically calling them Man of the Year, I think the song has a lot to do with Lorde breaking down her identity and trying to make sense of what's coming out. Lyrics that jump out for me from the song are like my new recent ego death, take my knife and I cut the cord, my babe can't believe I've become someone else, someone more like myself, which all go back to Lorde's rebirth. Her examination of what it means to be a woman and how she keeps feeling this masculine energy pulsating from within her. I think it's rather heartbreaking when she sings, who's gonna love me like this? Oh, who can give me lightness? Love me like this. Now I'm broken open. Like, ouch, okay, thanks queen, felt that deep in my bones. Mostly because when you are questioning literally everything about your identity, you really do kind of convince yourself that you're unlovable, or you're constantly worried that becoming your true self is going to turn people off you. And now that Lorde is broken open and trying to find her true self, she's worried that lovers won't want to be with her because she's not the stereotypical girl. Obviously, the Man of the Year in this instance is her. It's that masculinity that she feels coming out from her. She didn't think he'd appear, but he did. In a Rolling Stones video, Lorde explained the silver duct tape that's become such a large part of the Virgin aesthetic.
The person who wanted to be singing that song on a stage in front of people, it was me, and I wanted to be shirtless, just in a chain and my jeans, but I wanted some sort of coverage and something to sort of hint at binding, and pulled this tape out of the closet and sort of like very quickly did these 3 strips across my chest, and I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, that's me. That's who I am.
I think Lorde shows us that experience in the Man of the Year music video, and it's very raw and has a very subtle power to it. When we first saw this chest binding motif, it was her 2025 Met Gala look with her silver bandeau type top that was completely backless, but also flattened her chest a bit. And during the Met Gala interviews, she told Emma Chamberlain that it was an Easter egg to Virgin, and that the open back represents where she's at gender-wise.
I feel like a man and a woman, you know?
Yes.
So again, we have Lorde openly playing with her gender identity and finding ways to morph both aspects of herself into one person. Even the title Virgin holds clues about this. In her Instagram stories, Lorde shared snippets of an article titled, "The Meaning of Virgin Morphed. We Should Reclaim the Original Intent." The parts Lorde shared says that the term virgin was derived from a Greek word that meant not attached to a man, a woman who was one in herself. The article reads that goddesses like Isis, Astarte, Diana, and Ishtar were called virgins not because they were inexperienced, but because they were strong. Lorde shared another section from the same article that explains that there was some evidence that the word virgin derived from the combinations of the Latin words vir for man, as in virile, and gyn for a woman, as in gynecology. Essentially a man-woman or an androgynous person. And androgyny is not something that's new to Lorde. In an interview with Bella Freud on Fashion Neurosis, Lorde said that she was introduced to androgyny at a very young age. Her mum had introduced her to artists like David Bowie and Grace Jones.
Just these figures who you didn't need an explanation. They were the explanation.
So it's pretty clear just how much Lorde has thought about this and her own gender identity and how it fits into her artistic journey. And as much as Virgin has been a redefinition of Lorde's gender, it's also been a reclamation of her body. Something that I thought was super interesting was how Lorde seemed to connect her body image issues to the issues of her gender identity. In that same Document Journal interview, Lorde said, "I had made my body very small because because I thought that was what you did as a woman and a woman on display. As we know, Lorde's been on an open journey to find solace in her body and accept it for what it is and how it functions. In her email way back in September of 2023, Lorde wrote, "I realized earlier this year that listening to my body is hard for me. It's something I never really learned how to do. I also saw that my body is completely magnificent and that hating it is as futile as hating a tree." In the Document Journal interview, Lorde said she wouldn't come back to music until she made sense of her body image issues. "I was very weak. I look back now and I don't have the same feeling of floating away. I eat as much as I want and need now." Lorde struggles with accepting her body image, and disordered eating is probably the most explicit in Broken Glass of Virgin, which the song is maybe her most confessional and one that she said was the most difficult to write, record, and finish, and you can absolutely tell why. Lyrics like, "Did I cry myself to sleep about that, cheat about that, rot teeth about that, did I sweat hours a week about that, all of the above, I just wanted to punch the mirror to make her see that this won't last. It might be months of bad luck, but what if it's just broken glass?" Which obviously details how much Lorde was struggling to make herself an ideal weight just to be happy to look in the mirror. I found the link between Lorde's body image issues and her journey to expand her understanding of her gender really fascinating. Also incredibly relatable. To begin with, Lorde is experimenting with the confines in which she's perceived her own gender, and the markers, signifiers, roles, and standards society places upon gender and her body, which reminds me a lot of Judith Butler's critical thinking around performative gender and how gender is something more than a performance taught to a person. In her 1988 essay, Performative Acts and Gender Constitution, Judith Butler argues that our bodies are gendered from the start of our social existence. On page 522, she argues that to be a woman is to have to become a woman, to compel the body to conform to a historical idea of woman, to induce the body to become a cultural sign. Judith says that as part of the strategy of survival, gender is a performance with clearly punitive consequences. Discrete genders are part of what humanizes individuals within contemporary culture, and those who fail to do their gender right are regularly punished. Because there is neither an essence that gender expresses or externalizes, nor an objective ideal to which gender aspires, because gender is not a fact. The various acts of gender creates the idea of gender, and without those acts, there would be no gender at all. The idea that gender is something that we perform and everything we're led to believe and how we should behave under that gender is incredibly liberating. As we can see with Lorde, once you sort of understand that, you can kind of exist freely to be whatever you feel the most comfortable in being. And you learn that your body is yours and you can dress it up however you want. I mean, even RuPaul says, we're all born naked and the rest is drag. But I also think this acceptance that your gender is a performance can also apply to body dysmorphia. Your body and how you think it should look is just what you've been told by society. There's no natural way for a body to be. It wasn't really until Lorde connected her body issues with her questioning of her gender that it all kind of clicked for me and made a lot of sense. And I'm someone who's deeply struggled with my gender and my body. I'm a very tall person with very broad, manly shoulders, and I have wider hips and a bigger butt, which now I feel very blessed to have. But for a very long time, I felt like I'd lived in a Frankenstein body that's part male and part female. And at the same time, as a queer person, I'm still yet to learn where that line is in between being a feminine gay or potentially being a non-binary, gender fluid, or even trans person. And perhaps there is no line, and that's the point Judith and even Lorde are trying to make. There's no real marker that's right or wrong. I know that I'll never really be free from the noise in my head about gender dysphoria or my body dysmorphia. In a study published in the International Review of Psychiatry titled Body Dissatisfaction and Disordered Eating in Trans People, a systemic review of the literature, it found that body dissatisfaction plays a prominent role in gender dysphoria. In a number of these cases, this dissatisfaction manifested into disordered eating to try to suppress bodily features of natal gender and accentuate features of gender identity. That review also found that gender-affirming treatment was successful in increasing body positivity and satisfaction and improving body image. I'm not saying that Lorde's body issues come from her gender expression or vice versa, but I think the link there is strong between being dissatisfied in your body and being confused about your gender identity. I also think it's incredibly validating that in Lorde opening up and accepting a more masculine identity to her womanhood, that she's also been able to start the journey to being comfortable in her body. Of course, Lorde's exploration of her gender expression is is her own, but I find it super powerful that she's even sharing it with us in such a detailed and open way, especially given how bad the current political climate is that we're in. It should come as no secret just how difficult it is to be a queer and trans person today. So much hate and vitriol is thrown towards the community in an attempt to push us back into the fringes. After we had like a few good years of mediocre acceptance and embrace, governments are legislating at neckbreak speed to try and take away the few rights that trans people, trans kids in particular, have, and further govern what makes a real woman. So it's really powerful to have an artist like Lorde, who is as big as she is, be so loud and unapologetic in talking about her gender struggles and how she's been embracing her masculinity without having to minimize her femininity. But then again, Lorde's always been a counterculture artist. While so much of our mainstream is pushing right, white, and blonde, Lorde is here with her raw, messy, and unfiltered journey to dismantle her gender identity. It's also interesting to look at pop culture at the moment. As the world is pushing further to the right and gender is so politicized, it feels like we're back in the era of women being thin, pretty, and feminine. And we can see that in music too. Major female artists like Charli XCX, Sabrina Carpenter, Beyonce, Lana Del Rey, and even Lady Gaga are all still, in one way or another, perpetuating a stereotypical form of femininity. And yes, while most of them all subvert the expectations of women and their roles in heteronormative society, they're all still hyperfem. We still don't have any real trans masc or masculine women reaching mainstream success. And while Lorde doesn't label herself as this, it really does mean a lot to have at least one artist be like, hey, sometimes I feel like a woman and sometimes I feel like a man, and that's chill. It's even telling in the way that people have responded to Lorde being as open as she is about her gender. So many videos on YouTube are rather disgusting and frankly transphobic, and criticize Lorde's comments on gender rather than just being like, hey, thanks for sharing, queen. Instead, it's met with her being too woke or being cringe. And sure, people might think it's confusing and some people might think it's cringe, but we embrace that. In a time where femininity and queerness is being sterilized and any adverse expression of it is punished, it's cool that Lorde is being so open about exploring the confines of her gender. It makes Virgin and Lorde as an artist a lot more authentic.